Welcome back to the Creating Distance podcast, hosted by TA Sales. I'm your host, Tom Alamo. Some people call me Tommy Tahoe. And each week on Fridays, we'll be bringing you an episode to break down with salespeople and sales leaders the top tips, tactics, strategies, stories that you need to get to the next level of your career and up-level yourself. So let's get into it.
Right now on the Creating Distance podcast, we have my good friend, Jenn Nguyen, leader of the account management team at PandaDoc. Jenn, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. You have yourself recovered from inbound and the travel and the parties and everything like that?
Barely. I think we're about 2 weeks out from inbound, and I'll say HubSpot puts on a great conference. So between the follow-ups and what we learn and what I want to immediately apply to our business, I think I'm okay. I don't think I'm fully recovered. That takes maybe a month, but I'm here.
Yeah.
We're doing it.
Couple extra weeks, and then with young kids, it's like
Exactly.
The germs are spreading and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Well, there's a handful of topics that I want to get into, and I wanted to kick it off maybe in a semi uncomfortable way, depending on how well you take positive feedback. But I just want to read a quote from someone that gave you a recommendation on LinkedIn that I think speaks to what I would agree is my opinion of you as well. But someone wrote that Jenn is one of those rare leaders who not only sees the potential in people, but actively helps them grow. She has a real gift for focusing on your strengths while offering clear, actionable feedback that drives personal and professional growth. Working with her, you feel supported and challenged in the best way possible. Simply put, Jenn makes every team she leads better. So at the risk of starting this conversation with, boosting you up too much or making you uncomfortable, I would just be curious to hear your perspective on your reaction to that. And to me, that strikes me as something that's very intentional about how you foster the culture of a team and how you might approach that and think about that.
I'm flying. Secondly, I know exactly who wrote that. I remember when I did get that recommendation on LinkedIn. First, it was unprompted. Those always feel good because I do think unsolicited feedback throughout your career is truly a gift. And secondly, I believe that leadership is something that when the right folks step in at the right time, it is this really magical moment. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So when I first started leading back in circa 2017, I did not get the role the first time. I didn't get it the second time, and I got it on the third time. And what that really taught me is that I really had to work for it. And it also taught me that leadership in general is a very sought out position at so many companies where people can sometimes opt in themselves, or sometimes people are asked to lead. I was a bit of a hybrid where at first my hand was raised really high, and I didn't get the role based on some really competitive settings at Tableau. Of course, it's really tough to get a leadership role wherever you go, but I think that the quote-unquote gift that I have is something that I've observed over time. I think so much of your style and your approach and how you show up every day is something that's learned. And if you're able to really gather a lot of great principles and habits from other leaders, you make it into your own, and it somehow becomes your authentic self and your approach. But I will admit that in order for me to get into leadership role I am in now today, I did this through a variety of my own self-teaching, my own self-study, because this world is vast, the internet's vast, and Tableau had a really great set of trainers that would help us. But I'd also say that the amount of mentors I've had over my career has shaped the way that I show up today. And I deeply care for one really specific reason, because I know that when you have an amazing leader, that is your charter, that is your path to success. Mm-hmm. And I've been the recipient of good and bad and some mediocre and everything in between. And I take it really seriously, and I think about it 24/7.
Is there a point, or was there a point in your career that stood out to you or became more impactful, where someone took you under their wing or anything like that comes to mind?
I'd say my entry point into the Tableau world back in 2014 was critical because that company took a chance on me. My career started in affiliate marketing, and for those that don't know, affiliate marketing is really centered on a couple key elements when it comes to how that world is really positioned around a revenue share model. So you're competing against publishers and affiliates, and it's very complicated, but at the same time, it isn't as much as a true SaaS model. That's more negotiating on commission rates. I wanted to negotiate more on having people adopt and use the technology. So my entry point to Tableau was from a really wonderful woman named Jennifer Fonseca. And she was somebody who took a chance on me because I was coming from retail and affiliate marketing that didn't have that much to do with SaaS. It was a proxy. I would say it was in tech. But if she hadn't taken a chance on me and shown me how to be an account manager at a SaaS company, showing me what it was like to sell license-based subscriptions, I would have had an extremely hard time doing that later on in my career. So she's somebody who's made a big impact because of the way she leads and continues to lead today. She's an amazing listener. She sees the potential in people, and she's also unabashedly afraid to give real-time, very thoughtful feedback. So I'd say beyond the fact that she has a great name, since she's a fellow Jenn, she really paved the way for me.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And that's a common theme that I hear on the show, which is probably not surprising, of the power of mentorship and someone taking a chance on you and learning from those folks. When you were at Tableau and then at Salesforce, were you always on the AM side? Were you on the AE side as well, or did you really kind of focus in? That's where you landed and just like really honed your craft in the account manager world?
Always in account management, but I do have to give a little bit of an asterisk to that because in the way that those territories are built back in the day, not in this current state, we had hybrid territories, meaning it was down to the zip code. I mean, just the customer base, luckily, is and was so big that your territories are cut on a zip code basis. So you'd be assigned, let's just say Chicago, where you are. Is it 60616 maybe?
That's one. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's one of them.
I mean, I have it in my brain because I covered Chicago for a little bit of time. And let's just say I had 60616. I would cover all of that, inclusive of current accounts and then some of our pursuits, some of the green space. So but it's interesting because you think about where the revenue comes from. It's much easier to grow a current account than land a new account. So where do you think we focus our energy? It was typically on the current accounts. Now, Tableau also had a land and expand model where we had acquisition folks and then existing business folks, but in a very long-winded way of responding to that question, it was predominantly account management with a slight flavor of acquisition.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned you first got into leadership in 2017-ish. So in, almost 10 years, and then, years as an IC before that in the account management world, how do you feel like the viewpoint of the account manager has changed? And I think like where I'm coming from that question is, as someone that has been an AE, as someone that has been an AM, as someone that now talks to sales leaders on both sides, every single day, I feel like the AMs in the last few years have gotten a lot more support, maybe credit, maybe respect, maybe love internally, than maybe they got in the pre-COVID world. I don't know if that's just my perception, but what do you think has changed about that world?
Could not agree more, Tom. And the reason I feel that way is account managers are the true like renaissance people at a company. And what I mean by that is you just wear so many different hats and you have to context switch constantly throughout the day, from escalating a potential churn risk to growing an account to prescribing an upsell and then. And I would argue that the folks that the way that account management has evolved over time has gone from a pretty big departure from what it was maybe 8, 10 years ago, from we're here more as a guide and an advisor to all the way to consultant.
Yeah.
Like made almost a 180 flip, because nowadays, especially with how vast the internet is, there's really not a reason to talk to us unless we can provide some really critical value and insights.
Yeah.
And so what I love about how I work with my partner April Ayres, who's on the customer success side of the house, we have so many different ways and approaches to accounts where you almost have to play this world of swim lanes where account managers are focused more on the commercials and the prescription from an investment standpoint, whereas customer success is maniacally focused on adoption. But if you were to look at us at a Venn diagram, it'd almost be completely filled in with these little sections on the outside of what we do different. Yeah. And even the customer success function, I mean, talk about some heroes. Like the conversations that those folks navigate through in concert with account management can be just purely and just so incredible. Even I was on an account review this morning where I'm hearing how we're working a really challenging account, and you're just hearing these folks do a bit of a readout on this account, and it's just amazing to see where their role starts and stops and where the other one picks up. And so I do think account managers have really shifted over the years, but more importantly, it's more of a consultant than I've ever seen before.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I'm starting to see more companies switch to, AE and AM like full cycle roles where someone's doing the full scope again. I'm definitely seeing more of an investment in training, in tech, in hiring for AMs, in this world. And I feel like a lot of people, especially in tech, took it for granted that they had great NRRs and, people were renewing and upselling because, for whatever reason, great product market fit. And now that times are a little bit tighter and more competitive, I do think a great account managing team is, a huge differentiator between companies that are bringing on customers at a similar rate and what they can do to expand the relationship and keep them growing and keep kind of painting the picture of the vision for how your company is going to help the customer 1 year, 5 year, 10 years down the line.
I couldn't agree more with that statement, because I think a term that we all use a lot in our space is the customer journey. They go from ideation, which is, of course, is why should we be using a product like PandaDoc, all the way through why should we continue to use it and how do we use it differently and how do we use it more and more effectively. And the tone and the conversation shifts from day one to day 1,000. And so as you follow customers along on their journey, it's so vital and important to know what to insert or include or recommend as that journey continues. And in fact, PandaDoc's been around for almost 15 years. And if you think about some of the account reviews I go on, sometimes I look back, how long they've been a customer for. Some folks have been with us for 10, 12, even up to 15 years. And you have to constantly remind yourself, when somebody writes a check every year, they've got to back it up with value. There's no reason any customer, and even I use Spotify. I continue to renew my Spotify membership because I am extremely happy. I love my experience. I'm big into music. I'm big into listening to podcasts, right? So that's what we have to uphold as a result, is delivering on value. But I do think that, gosh, what a world we're living in where the competition is saturated and steep, and in order to stand out, you have to really be able to bring very vital information at any touch point. There's no gone are the days of checking in and how are you doing. I feel like a lot of the warm fuzzies have started to dissipate when it comes to the SaaS world.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a skeptic, but I just feel like people aren't really around to schmooze anymore.
Yeah.
So
people are disinterested, and maybe that's has to do with the post-COVID world too, where people aren't getting together in person. Everything's more efficient. Everything, maybe times are a little bit tighter. I do see a trend towards that, where someone that is a little bit more challenger-y or more strategic is just faring better than the person that, kind of
Yeah.
relies on just the relationship sale that, they might have done really well 5 years ago or 10 years ago with that, but it just doesn't seem like that's working as well right now.
One pro tip I'll say for anybody listening that's interviewing for an account manager role is please stop saying you're a great relationship builder.
Mm,
That is assumed. That is something that is a non-negotiable for anybody hiring for that role. What I would advise, or I guess the way I would tilt that is I'm really effective at communicating with my customers to make sure that they see value. And I do
mm,
this by, it's all about connection. The relationship it is what it is. But I really do feel like, especially with how SaaS has really felt quite difficult in the last couple of years, because gone are the days of, you know, like overspending and shelfware. I mean, there's no shelfware anymore. And so when you
yeah.
have to relationship build, it's purely based on value.
Mm. What does stand out to you from an interview perspective if I want to join your team? What are things that people have done as you've been hiring, or maybe wish people have done as you're like going through candidates, that stands out as like, wow, that is a great sign for me as an account manager, as someone that I'd want on my team.
I think it's all rooted in how they display curiosity
Mm,
and how they also display their level of preparation. And what I mean by that is I've had some candidates lately come up with just these beautifully constructed point of views where they'll research a customer story. Let's just say we have a customer story on our website. They'll add their spin or their own, we'll call it recommendation based off that. And they'll either present it in a live interview setting or they'll do it as a follow up and they'll say, I was thinking about this customer story and here's my point of view of how I think we could continue the relationship or continue the partnership together. And I do think in order to stand out as a candidate, whether it be PandaDoc, Salesforce, Tableau, Oracle, wherever you're interviewing, it's all about the research and the prep and asking as many curious questions as possible. I don't think there's really anything you should be afraid to ask in an interview besides clearly like inappropriate things. Like don't go that direction. But
yeah,
but you think
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
just the way that you show up and show up in a curious, prepared fashion, that to me, I get really, really amped when I see that displayed.
Mm. I want to take it back to leadership and culture for a minute, and knowing that developing a strong culture is something that you're strong at. You've learned from mentors, you've learned from being on those great teams, and then trying to bring that to teams that work with you. What percentage of if you were to coach me to be a great leader, and I'm taking on a new director or VP of sales role, what percentage would you say of my success is going to come from like I know the X's and O's about account management, if that's the path, versus more of the like quote unquote soft skills and more of the emotional intelligence side of the house? Like how would you weight the importance of those two things?
I almost put about an 80-20 split. And the reason, meaning 80% soft skills, 20
Mm,
foundational knowledge of the role. And the reason I say that is so much of any job function can be taught based on the environment. But when you show up with a lot of those soft skills, really fine-tuned with a ton of experience and or relevant proxy experience, I do think what account managers do can be taught. Now, I will say that the giant asterisk in that the sales ability is also really important, but the actual function of account management, I welcome to have a diverse set of experience. We've had even folks from a variety of different, we'll call it angles of the customer journey that have joined where I've thought, that's a great hire because I never thought hiring somebody from this function would actually
mm.
bode well for account management. So I would dare I say about 80-20 when it comes to the combination of soft skills and true like foundational knowledge of an account manager.
Yeah, I think a lot of those things can be taught. and a lot of the emotional intelligence you can grow, but it's a lot trickier to teach, and it's a lot harder
Super
to
tricky.
improve in those areas.
And EQ is something that I have some very pointed questions during interviews that I ask purely because,
Oh, give me one of them.
okay, so
I'm interviewing right now for the first sales rep at TA Sales, so I need all the interview questions.
oh, good. Oh, okay, let's go.
If you know anyone in
Oh,
Chicago,
hey,
let me know.
hey, everybody listening, if you are a great seller in Chicago, call Tom. So one of the best questions I still ask this today to account managers or account executives is, you're going to have a bad quarter. You're going to have a bad month. And let's just say you lose the biggest deal and you've spent upwards of 100 hours on this deal. What do you do in that moment and how do you recover? If they're like, I slam my laptop shut and I'm out of this place and I fume, and if you hear things like that, then you know their EQ is super low. And I have heard
Yeah.
that, by the way. But
Yeah.
then I get some responses that I absolutely love. There's this one interview where I asked that question and they responded by saying, you know what, Jen? What I did is I went back through and I did my own retrospective. I took a walk, I came back, and I made my dials and I continued on with my day. It's just about that
Respect.
fortitude. That mental toughness has so much to do with EQ.
Yeah, yeah, respect. I have a friend who he'll give himself a designated time, like under like an hour, to pout, and he'll say, "All right, next
Yeah,
hour, I'm gonna pout, and I'm
the
gonna be in a
clock.
bad mood." And then whenever that, or like the evening, if it's the end of the day or whatever, then it's like, "All right, tomorrow I'm back on it." So I think like
Totally.
time boxing. The poutiness or whatever is fair. If I put 100 hours into a deal, I'd be pretty bummed.
Oh,
We've
such
all
a
been
bummer.
there.
Oh, for sure. And by the way, I believe in time boxing it in the moment.
Yeah.
I also believe on keeping that reflection threaded throughout the next however many days or months, because I do think if you move on too fast, you'll ignore the learnings. If you do a
Yeah.
retrospective, if you really just look at yourself and your team in the mirror and think about what you could have done differently, that's the goal. That's the magic in sales, is you have to learn from the losses just as much as you learn from the wins.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We could not possibly have a podcast in September of 2025 without talking about AI. That would be fiscally irresponsible. So
Ludicrous.
yeah, we were going to have to bring it up, or the ratings are going to go down. Something that's interesting to me is that, PandaDoc has what, 60,000 customers, just tons and tons, and grew from working with a ton of small businesses and, went up market. And, from what I know about an account manager role, there's a lot of, if you have so many customers, there's a lot of just inbound things that can come up of requests and calls and even support questions or things that should go to other teams. So I'm curious, like in that lens, or really anything else that you're talking about with needing to prove value versus, use relationship as the crutch. What are you seeing, either reps on your team doing or leaders on your team using AI for to, help them be more efficient?
A lot of really cool things my team's been working on that I'm very proud of, that I'll dive into in just a minute. But I feel like we need to pause and even talk about what is AI and what does it even mean? Because
Mm,
I think this terminology is wonderful in that it's giving a little light and it's shining the importance of what AI is. But one of my peers, she's on the RevOps team, her name is Greta. She's
Shout out
also,
to Greta.
oh, shout out to Greta. Hi, Greta. What she's always reminded us of from a RevOps perspective is AI has always been around. I mean, it's been around for decades, by the way. It's now just getting a name and shining the light on it. And her belief is that AI is just constantly running in the background. And then when you use that trust but verify methodology, which we all do with AI, then the human element comes in as like the final stop.
Mm,
And what I mean by, so how that dovetails into our strategy and what we're doing from our lens is, we use AI to facilitate so much at PandaDoc. We just signed on with Clay. We're really excited about Clay. I
mm,
know that's been a really, really incredible product. And when you think about all that we've been enriching with our information, how we create point of views, how we negotiate. We use Gemini quite a bit. Where we believe AI helps in the account management world is efficiency. And when I say the word efficiency, that has a lot of different flavors and meanings. Well, what I mean by efficiency in this world is cutting down on some of the admin and the manual aspects of the role and turning that into time where we can critically think. So an example of this, and again, another shout out, because again, AI is a team effort, is there's a gentleman on my team named Jim Petrola. And Jim is an AI fanatic. Yeah. I believe even his partner, his wife, is even an AI too. So just imagine those conversations. So he has a passion, which he's followed that passion to do really wonderful things for our team. He has built a repository of gems, and a gem on Gemini translates to a almost like an API call, a call to systematically go in and fetch information based on an exact output I'm seeking. An example of this would be a negotiation. So we all love this book. I have it on my desk. And for anybody looking on Spotify, what I'm doing right now, I'm taking a book out called Never Split the Difference.
The classic.
We've all heard it. We love ourselves from Chris Voss. So he has built a gem called the Voss gem. And what do you think that gem does, Tom?
I think I've got a little bit of insider trading on this, but I'm pretty sure that you can upload a scenario, call transcript, or talk to it, and basically it'll coach you as though it is Chris Voss and how you should handle the conversation.
Beautifully said. It's exactly what it does. And if you think about how much time, and we'll just call it agony, goes into a negotiation, if you can power a gem to think like this person, and you can feed it the last call transcript, the last email, Zed communication, and you can have it return a really thoughtful, Chris Voss-like response, you've just saved yourself quite possibly hours of agony. And an example of this is one of my leaders just told me today that one of her folks is using the gem on her team. And she's been noticing this person's been a little quiet lately, and she's like, what's going on? And she's like, oh, Jordan, like, I've been using this gem, and we don't need to collaborate on these emails and how to respond. I've just been leaning on the gem. And it's a little scary in a sense that, like, what is the leader's value anymore when the gems have done their work? At the same time, that frees up our time to go think of new ways to go to market, or ways I can even get involved in the more strategic deals than the one-off escalation. So I am ecstatically proud of how this team has used AI to not only make our own advancements in efficiency, but also help us have a better experience for our customers. And I do think between the power of Claude, Gemini, whatever your flavor might be, there's just, the world is so vast, it's a little overwhelming, but if you could really pare it down to, let's just say, 8 to 10 specific scenarios throughout any given day, it can be really powerful.
Yeah, I love so much of what you said. I think there's a few things I want to touch on. You know, the efficiency piece, most sellers and sales leaders know, you know, there's often quoted data that somewhere between 60 to 80% of a salesperson's day is not spent selling. You know, it's doing admin work, it's prepping for calls, it's sending follow-ups, it's uploading things into Salesforce or whatever. So I do think a future state of, you know, and even some things happening in the current state of how can we slightly tweak that so that I, as a seller, that's my skill set. How can I spend 30, 40, 50% of my day, 60% talking to customers, doing things that add value versus, you know, things that anyone can do or a technology can do. That's to me, that's the baseline. And then I love the idea of the Voss and the other kind of like coaching and thought partner, you know, ideas. And, you know, then allowing you, if you don't have to have that back and forth with, you know, rep A about that deal, now your hour just opens up and you can explore these new ways to grow the business that I think AI is not quite, it can be a good thought partner for some things, but I think it's better at some of these kind of like lower level tasks than coming up with what should my partnership AM strategy be for all of 2026. I wouldn't quite use it for that entire like outsource your whole brain for that. So it allows you to maybe focus on more of that creative work.
Time and a place. And I like the word you just used on creative. I think creativity trumps everything. I will never forget when Sean Turner, who is the VP of sales at Tableau when I was hired there, he had said during the interview process, you're trying to get to know them, they're trying to get to know you. And he had mentioned during the interview, the top three things, these are the top three things that makes our account managers the most successful. It's, of course, curiosity, it's persistence, and then he said creativity. And he goes, what I mean by that is we have a licensing model. This was back in the day when we were on-prem, we weren't even in the cloud yet. And he would say things like, we don't believe our licensing model is a one-size-fits-all. There's going to be some people that want to break our model in order to afford it or license it properly. So he said, the most creative ideas always win, and we'll always find a way to get the deal done. And when I was starting to study all the people that were going to President's Club, because, we're competitive, we want to chart our path to P Club every year, I was noticing that some of these deals felt a little, quote unquote, off script. Didn't follow that typical pattern. And where AI can play well with that is it can really bolster your creativity, because some of that deep thinking and research is maybe not something we want to do necessarily all the time, because it does take a really high level of effort and almost like that cognitive thinking. But I will say, when you can lean on it to just get started, sometimes it's like an artist and you're looking at a blank canvas. That's what AI is to me. It helps you get started.
Yeah, totally. And it makes me wonder, when you bring that up about the P Club winners. I was talking, excuse me, with another client of mine that's head of sales at a startup, and they're using, we'll say, a large sales and marketing software company that has been mentioned on this current interview, that, there's only been a few of them, so people can guess, and been very disappointed with the sales experience. As a company that is touted for being great at sales and great with sales training, and felt like they're just kind of doing the least to potentially earn her business. And I've actually heard that a lot from sales leaders, recently in the last year or two, and see a lot of that on LinkedIn of just like, are people putting in the effort? And I wonder if, I don't know how often you get pitched and get cold called and cold emailed, but have you seen any sort of difference from that standpoint of reps, maybe using AI and getting a little bit lazy versus using it to make them better and like raise the floor? Or do you think that's just, maybe I'm just kind of caught in this bubble of, negativity around it?
I think that, well, first of all, I love taking sales calls. And I will say the calls I respond to, or the emails or the outreach I respond to, is highly personalized. And that's where I think at this point, and where AI has evolved, there's no excuses. I should not be getting blanket, boring copy that anybody could write. It needs to be personal. What do you know about me? Do I live in Colorado? Where did I go to school? There's so much on my LinkedIn profile that can lend to a personalized message. And I will admit, being an inbound, you're being sold to constantly. Any conference you go to, typically if you walk the floor and you go to the booth, everybody has a pitch. And typically at those booths, they're great because they're tailored and they're ready, and you can have more of a meaningful conversation. And I have taken 2 sales calls from inbound. And I am currently in cycles with those folks, because what they are providing to me would change the game for my business. And they've listened and they've responded and they've come up with really tailored messaging. Arguably, based on my conversations, most likely with a bit of AI, but I wouldn't say all AI, because we're in the get to know you phase where I don't think they have enough data, enough inputs to have AI really help them beyond researching, of course, PandaDoc. So I do think that for right now, in this moment in 2025, there is a separation of the pack. And what I mean by that is you have folks embracing AI, loving it, using it, almost like running towards it. And then you have sellers and account managers and anybody in revenue functions that are running away from it because they're thinking it can't be trusted. Like, I don't want it. And so we're starting to see that movement between good and great. To me, great is you embrace AI. Good is you either are resisting it or you're just not willing to get to know it. And I will say, when I am in active cycles, I can really tell when that persistence is at the, how do I say this? It's almost as if AI is helping them connect with me in the right way to get me moving, if that makes sense.
Tell me, what do you mean by that?
So I am in conversations with a company where we're actually on a texting basis because we
Love
met
that.
at Inbound. We just exchanged cell phone information.
Yeah.
And I can tell that when this person will write back to me, he inserts another value in the exchange. And then he'll prompt and insert. And it's almost as if he has this flow where it's getting me thinking more deeply and critically. And I'm actually now pushing on my team to see if we could do a more robust evaluation. So it's almost as if it's working as like a second brain, like an additional capacity of brain power that is helping him not just, again, I just mentioned this, like gone are the days of checking in. He's texting me, reminding me about certain things that's getting me really thinking and pushing my team to take action.
Is there ever a case where the texting, people abuse the privilege or use it and it gets like, what's the line for you as a leader where it gets annoying versus helpful? Because I try to get on text level when appropriate. I tell reps to do that, but there is a fine line between, hey, any update, and texting someone every single morning about that versus like the experience that you're having, which sounds quite positive.
I would say there needs to be a very high level of self-awareness when you get somebody's cell phone. That's like technical crime. If you can get a cell phone,
that's like emotional intelligence. You gotta have.
We're weaving in a lot of key themes here of know the audience, know it's getting, like, I'm a mom of two, so you like the things coming into my cell phone are the spectrum is wide. And so when I think about being sold to via text, it's all about, again, really limiting it, unless, here's another big asterisk, is if there's paperwork out, meaning you have a proposal out and it's waiting to get signed, I feel like you have a little bit more of a wiggle room to do more of those daily updates.
Okay.
But all of it comes down to just the sheer value of what you're trying to communicate, and or if you're at that time in the negotiation where you're just down to the wire and you're making sure that everybody stay on top of that signature, that's when you can feel that intensity and that frequency build. Otherwise, hours of the day, keep it between 8 and 5.
Yeah.
Keep it tight. Don't write me a novel.
Yeah.
I think things like that are just what you need to be aware of. The other thing I'll mention, I know I gave you this tip already, Tom. If you have an iPhone and you're talking to another Apple user, you can delay your text. Text delay is a beautiful thing. So
yes, that is a beautiful thing.
If you're going on something at 11 p.m., which I do a lot, make sure you just are courteous. There's a lot of etiquette that has to be done around when you send messages.
Yeah, agreed, especially when it's with a prospect or someone on your team or something like that.
Yeah.
Jen, any other topics we haven't gotten to that you want to make sure we cover? Otherwise, we'll do our kind of like few rapid fires to close us down.
Geez, I would say one thing I meant to lead with in the beginning of our conversation is talking about core values. And when I think about the note you let off where you read a beautiful recommendation, which I'm really glad you read that. I hadn't thought about that in a while. I do think a lot of your core values come at play as far as how you show up. And so my core values, for instance, are authenticity, inclusivity, and family. Those have been my same core values since I got into leadership. And I did this amazing exercise led by Emily Coleman, who was one of my individual contributors at the time. And her wife actually owns this company. Oh, I'm forgetting the name. Maybe we'll have to name drop this in the links. But
yeah, we could put it in the notes.
Yeah, anyway, she was like, hey, my wife owns this company and they do this core values exercise and I think the team should do it. And at the time I was like, whatever, like core values, I know what I'm about. I don't think that matters. And she's like, I promise, let's do this. And I promise it'll make a difference. So this is back when I used to live in Austin. Imagine like being on 6th and Congress, this beautiful location. We're looking out on the lake and we're in this conference room and she's putting these cards out on the table. It's this deck of cards. And then You whittle it down to what your core values are, and we're all just doing this. And by the end of that hour, I I cannot believe this happened. I swear we learned more about each other in that hour than I had in months. So I
Yeah.
will say from a culture perspective, knowing what their core values are, knowing that those can change at any time, so maybe you have to loop back to those, but I can rattle those off because I've known what they are for almost 10 years. I believe in my decision making, and the way I lead has to do with my core values.
Hmm.
And so when you think about forming a team, motivating a team, potentially interviewing for a new team, just making sure you're aligned to the core values makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And even the fact of someone that has spent the time thinking about that, it says a lot, or not, might say a lot about
Mm-hmm.
whether or not your values align, if that's something that you have
Yeah,
close to you for 10 plus years. So
think
I
about
love
it.
that.
We're all on a team, and like we got to row this boat together. And
Totally.
if A, you don't know what they are, find out, and B, if you don't even know what yours are, do this exercise. I will find out what it is. It was so cool.
Yeah.
And
I would love to see that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
I'd
I
love to
just
see
make
that.
sure I drop that.
Yeah, and I think, this is something that I've seen a lot on LinkedIn and elsewhere recently is the whole, there seems to be like there always is kind of like a disparity of, the work-life balance versus the work really hard, really, really hard kind of like camp. And there's a lot of press going out about these, startups doing the 996, which is working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. in office 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. And I don't know if you've seen that, but that's getting a lot of press from AI companies that are really small. And so people have taken strong stances in either camp. And just as a way of an example around the values, I don't think that either one of those is necessarily there's a world where you do that. There's a world where you don't sign on before 9 and you don't stay on after 5. There's a world where there's a lot of middle ground between those two camps as well. And I think where I'm going with this is there's no really right path for anyone, in particular. But I think everyone's got to choose where they want to go and what their core values are and what their goals are. And, depending on what you choose, you're going to be on a certain path, professionally, personally, in all different ways. And so you just got to know what you're signing up for and be comfortable with that. And it doesn't mean that the other person next to you has to do that. But I do think knowing where you want to get to and knowing what path is going to help you get there is the right thing, personally and
I
professionally.
could not
So,
agree more. I think you mentioned this gentleman's name, and I'm going to butcher his last name, Mark Kloslow
yeah,
from
Costco,
Outreach.
yeah. Yeah.
Say his last name?
Costaglow.
Okay, Costaglo. So Mark, if you're listening, that's
Hey,
how you say
Mark.
it. Hey, Mark. He was, I really admire his thought leadership. And one post that he posted that I will never forget is he talks about there is a time and a place as far as how much you want to quote unquote grind and make money. And then
Totally.
there's a time and place for how you want to focus on other aspects of your life, whether it be growing a family, inching yourself closer to retirement, whatever it might be. And he has this beautiful post that talks about year by year what was happening both with his family and what was happening with him financially. And
Yeah.
it almost goes on a bell curve. It like reaches this pinnacle when he was CRO of Outreach. And then he went off, I believe, after that and did more of his own independent thing, which means he took a massive pay cut.
Yeah.
But then he decided to focus more on his family. So I do agree in time, place, and space for everything. But I think the most important thing is like know what you want and also know how to set your boundaries. For example, on my team, Slack and all the emojis. When you see a vacation emoji, which at PandaDoc is a nice little tropical tree,
Love
when
it.
you see that, don't talk to those people. And when
Yeah.
my leaders are on vacation or whoever rolls to me or whoever I'm talking to, I'll say very clearly in bold, this is not urgent. Please get to this when you get back. But here's what I wanted to mention, or here's an action for you when you return. I do not expect people to work when they're on vacation. And I do want to correct you on one thing I think you mentioned that I don't believe is true, is
Okay.
I don't think there's a work-life balance. I do think there's a work-life rhythm
Yeah.
because
I agree with
balance,
you.
balance is like, what does it even mean? What does it mean to be balanced? But I do think
Nothing's ever
no,
perfectly in balance. It's like
no.
there's you've got the four burners, analogy, where one is really on, if you're thinking about like your family and your work and your health and something else, and it's like, there's always times where you're focused more on one or two, and one or two kind of fall off, and then you got to go pick back up over there, then pick back up over there, and that's life. I don't have to tell you, you have 2 kids, and you're the head of account management at a fast-growing SaaS company, so I don't need to preach to you about that.
No day is ever in balance, but what I will say is, I do feel like when I step out of a day and I feel proud, what I have accomplished in that day is knowing I've made an impact on somebody's life. And that's actually a big reason why I gravitated towards PandaDoc, is I had this amazing run at Tableau, then Salesforce, and we went from 5,000 people to 75,000 people overnight. And I'm so grateful because I learned so much, and I wanted more impact. Therefore, I went to a smaller company. And if I can make impact on something, sometimes it's not coworkers, by the way. Sometimes I have a okay day at work, but I taught my son William about the power of a better kick in soccer. Like, sweet, I made an impact on William's life today.
Yeah.
But it's, I think, measuring your success, what a good day looks like, how you strike that work-life rhythm is really very personal and changes constantly. So
totally. Jenn, I wish we booked 3 hours for this instead of 1, but I always enjoy spending time with you. I appreciate the chat. Would definitely encourage folks, if they listen to this, to reach out to you on LinkedIn and maybe give you a shout or connect with you. But just want to give you a chance, if you have any other last parting thoughts or nuggets for the crew listening here before we sign off.
I'm really, really encouraged and excited we didn't do any rapid fire, because I'll admit that was the thing that made me the most nervous about today.
You just talked through it. We just riffed around it.
Thank goodness. I'm just kidding. No, I think my parting message is, especially for the folks in sales and even proxies or supporting groups, is just to make sure you really get to know intrinsic motivation and what people care about, and the rest will follow.
Love it. Jenn Nguyen, appreciate you coming on.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thanks for checking out that episode. 2 quick things as a takeaway. Number 1, we would feel honored if you left a review wherever you're listening to this podcast, if it's on Spotify or Apple or YouTube, to just let us know how we're doing, what else you'd like to see. If you'd like to learn more about us, you can check us out at tasales.co. Love to hear from you there. Much love. Have a great week.